a summer night in 2005, five friends gathered for dinner in Provo, Utah. One of them brought up a little known cave tucked away nearby, something a few of them had heard about, but only one had ever actually explored. The cave was hidden, small, flooded in parts. It didn't even appear on city maps. As they listened to the story, they laughed at how reckless it sounded. Someone joked, they should call it the Cave of Death. That name was meant as a joke, but by sunrise, it would become something else entirely. Near the city, there's a giant white letter Y painted high on the side of a mountain, a landmark placed there by students of Brigham Young University more than a century ago. It's been aptly given the name Y Mountain. It's lit up during school events, and hiking to it's a popular local tradition. But just beyond the Y, tucked inside a stand of trees, there once lay a forgotten cave. It wasn't large, it wasn't marked, and it didn't appear on official maps. The cave was left over from old mineral mining operations, abandoned long ago and swallowed by nature. Because of its small size and remote location, no city records mentioned it, and most locals had no idea it even existed. Those who did know treated it like a secret, shared only with close friends. Some had explored it, but very few entered more than a few feet inside. Stories of how narrow, cold, and dark it was were enough to scare most people off. To the group of friends who had heard about it over dinner, that just made it all the more tempting. August 17th, 2005. Five friends gathered for dinner in Provo. Ariel Singer, Jennifer Galbraith, Blake Donner, Scott McDonald, and Steve Hunley. Between jokes and catching up, the conversation turned to that hidden cave. Jennifer had been there before and told the others what she had done. She had gone deep inside. She'd waded through a flooded chamber, ducked under ice-cold water, and swam through a pitch-black tunnel barely wide enough to fit. On the other side was a small, secret cavern. She'd reached it, but she nearly passed out from the cold. That detail didn't scare her friends. It fascinated them. They started joking. "You almost died down there? We should call it the Cave of Death." But the name stuck. Somewhere between the laughter and curiosity, the plan to return was born. Steve opted out. He had to work the next day. But the rest, swept up in adrenaline and the promise of something rare, couldn't let it go. A sixth person joined, Joseph Ferguson. He hadn't heard the warning signs, only the word adventure. With Joseph now among them, the group of five set out into the darkness. Their destination, a nearly forgotten cave, tucked away behind the trees of a disused golf course just outside Provo. It was a short drive. They arrived around 3 a.m., the world around them silent, sleeping. Only two flashlights lit their path as they searched for the hidden entrance. It wasn't marked, of course. The only clue was the trickle of cold water leaking from between the rocks. Then they found it, a narrow, jagged opening, barely wide enough for one person to slip through. Without hesitation, they crouched down, one by one, and slid inside. For a moment, Joseph followed, but the cold, wet dark felt wrong to him. He paused, then backed out, telling the others he'd wait outside. The others pressed on. Inside, the passage narrowed, forcing them to crawl. A fork split between the path. One way led to a dead end, the other sloped down into icy water. Jennifer recognized it. This was the same flooded tunnel she had swum once before. She spotted the rope, stretched tight from one side to the other, just like she had remembered. And one by one, they prepared to dive in. One by one, they prepared themselves. They crouched by the edge of the flooded tunnel, water lapping at their arms as they steadied their breath. The plan was simple: hold the rope, dive under, and pull themselves through to the other side. Jennifer went first. She had done it before. But even she paused, bracing herself for the cold. Then she submerged, disappearing into darkness. A long moment passed. Then, tug, tug, she had made it. Next Next went Blake, then Scott, finally Ariel. Each one dove into the freezing water, dragging themselves forward by the rope. One at a time, they emerged into the hollow beyond, gasping and shivering, but alive. Inside, the space was small. The cavern was just big enough for the four of them to stand chest deep in water. The walls dripped with condensation. Their flashlights scanned across slick rock, and for a brief moment, the group marveled at where they were. A hidden room beneath the mountain, known only to a handful of people. But then they noticed something. The air smelled off, like stale earth, musty, heavy. No wind, no movement, just the sound of their breath. Jennifer coughed, then Scott rubbed his eyes. They didn't know it yet, but they were already running out of air. They didn't panic at first, but the air was getting worse by the second. The stale, heavy smell was more than just unpleasant. It was a warning. Jennifer was the first to say it out loud. "We need to go, now." The others nodded. They were all starting to feel it. Dizziness, shortness of breath, that strange pressure in their heads. They knew the way back. Just hold your breath, follow the rope. Simple, right? Ariel volunteered to go first. She took one last breath, shallow, unsatisfying, and disappeared into the water. The others waited for the signal, a sharp tug, a sign that she'd made it, but it never came. 1 minute passed, then 2. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she got turned around. The others argued about what to do, their voices low and nervous. There was no time left to think. The air was getting thinner. They had no choice. One by one, they slipped beneath the surface and followed after her into the same dark tunnel, not knowing that Ariel had never made it through. What they couldn't see was that her body had become lodged in the tunnel, and now she was blocking the only way out. Outside, Joseph checked his phone. 3:45 a.m. He'd been waiting alone in the dark for nearly 45 minutes. That didn't make sense. The cave wasn't big. They should have been back by now. He called out into the trees. Nothing. Just the sound of wind and running water. A pit began to form in his stomach. He paced, tried their phones, but none of them had service this deep in the canyon. So he did the only thing he could. He started calling everyone he knew who might know the cave. Eventually, someone picked up. When Joseph explained how long it had been, there was a pause. Then the voice on the other end said, "That's way too long. You need to call for help, now." Joseph hung up and dialed 911. By sunrise, police and search and rescue teams had arrived. Air pumps were hauled in, shoved into the narrow opening, and switched on, forcing oxygen into the cave. No one said it, but they all knew the truth. If anyone was still alive in there, they were running out of time. As air was pumped into the cave, rescuers could only wait. The narrow tunnel made entry impossible until the water level dropped. Slowly, over the next couple of hours, it began to recede. Finally, just after 6 a.m., the first team crawled inside. What they found was haunting. 4 bodies, all facing the same direction, toward the exit. Ariel had gone first, but she never made it out. Somehow, she'd gotten disoriented in the underwater tunnel, maybe from low oxygen, or maybe from panic, and her body blocked the path. The others had no way of knowing. Each took their turn, pulling along the rope, only to find the way blocked. There was no room to turn around, no room to pass, and no time to make it back. One by one they drowned, just inches from safety. The small cavern they'd marveled at hours earlier had become their tomb. The news of the tragedy spread quickly through Provo. 4 vibrant, adventurous young people gone in one night. The community was stunned and heartbroken. Officials wasted no time. The cave was declared a public safety hazard. Concrete was poured into the entrance, permanently sealing it off. What had once been a whispered secret among a handful of locals was now closed forever. Families of the victims mourned. They weren't reckless, they were curious, brave, hopeful. They had trusted each other and believed they could make it through. And for a time, they almost did. The media dubbed it the Cave of Death, but to their loved ones, it wasn't about the cave. It was about the promise of a shared experience, the thrill of a place few had ever dared enter. That promise had turned fatal, But the story didn't end underground. In the years that followed, a small plaque was placed near the sealed cave, etched with the names of those who never came back: Ariel, Jennifer, Blake, Scott. 4 names, frozen in time, a quiet reminder of how easily the line between adventure and tragedy can blur. To this day, hikers near the site sometimes stop and stare at the hill where the entrance once was. There's no sign of the cave anymore, only a gentle slope and a feeling that something once lived there. Maybe it's the silence, or maybe it's something else. The story of the Cave of Death faded from national news, but it never left Provo. For the friends and families, that night in August still echoes. Not just because of what happened, but because of what could have been. There are still countless hidden places like it, off-grid, undocumented, mysterious. And while some are tempted to seek them out, the question remains: is every mystery meant to be solved? Thank you all so much for watching and sharing my videos. Love you. Bye-bye.